What's going on, guys? Linus here. Welcome to my sort of review of The Hobbit. First things first, this is some Guardians of Middle-earth gameplay on the Xbox 360. The demo, I actually saw that today. It may have been out longer. I have no idea, but I'm terrible at the game. I just figured I'd play for a little bit and actually recorded some as well. It's a pretty fun game. I'm not really into MOBAs, but it's pretty fun. There's a bunch of characters. You just see me going through the characters, not sure who to pick. I think in the end I picked Legolas or the weird Hobbit guy whose name I do not know. But anyway, first of all, this is not really a review of The Hobbit that you may be looking for if you somehow found this video by chance. I'm not like a film critic. I don't know anything about movies. I just watch them and enjoy them. And I know that The Hobbit is not out yet in America and some other places around the world, probably Canada. And it came out yesterday in Europe, in most European countries, I believe. I live in the Netherlands. And it came out yesterday. I went to the theater with some friends and we watched The Hobbit. We went to the 2D version, not 3D. They did have IMAX 3D with like a higher frame rate and all that stuff. But if you wanted to go to like, you know, one of those versions, at least 3D, you'd have to pay like €5 extra, and I just said, nah, I'm not doing that, because the normal version is like €9, I believe, and the other one is €14, or €14.50, so I do not really enjoy 3D. I already wear glasses every day, so having to wear a second pair is not amazing. I do not like doing it. So we went to the 2D version. But I really liked the movie. Let me just say that I had pretty high hopes for the movie. I read the book, The Hobbit, 2 or 3 times, but that was a long time ago. But I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was really great. And also, as for the gameplay, I'm playing as Legolas. This is in the offline mode. I was looking for a game for like 4 minutes, and then the game just decided that there was no one online for me to play with. I had to play by myself, and I do absolutely terrible. So also, if you're watching for the gameplay, honestly, you probably shouldn't be watching this at all. Mostly it's just for my subscribers, but gameplay's terrible. My review is probably going to be terrible as well. But I did read The Hobbit 2 or 3 times, and I thought it was a great book. I liked it a lot. But I wasn't really sure anymore what I was supposed to be expecting. I didn't really read any reviews. I didn't do anything to see what the movie was going to be like. So we just entered the theater, and I just sat down without any real expectations. I just figured I'd, you know, see it as it came. And it basically starts off how you know, the way you might expect. It starts off in a Shire with actually it doesn't start off with Martin Freeman, but it starts out with Ian Holm, I think his name is, as Bilbo. He's like the old Bilbo guy, and Frodo's there. He's a lot older now because I actually found out that the first Lord of the Rings movie came out in 2001, which is 11 years ago. I mean, that's crazy. In my memory, it's like 6 years maybe, or 7, but 11, that's a lot of years. So you can see, obviously, that Frodo's a little bit older, and that Ian Holm looks a bit older. Same goes for Sir Ian McKellen, Christopher Lee, I think his name is, the guy who plays Saruman. They all look a bit older, so they've probably had some, you know, CGI, computer-generated imagery applied to make them look a bit younger. But it's just crazy that that movie came out so long ago. But obviously, a lot of people will remember the Lord of the Rings and how that starts out. Like, the first movie starts out with basically Gandalf enters the Shire, and Frodo's there waiting for him, and there's a big party for Bilbo's, what was it, 111th birthday. So this movie, The Hobbit, starts out with sort of a back in that time, basically, where they're preparing for the party, and Frodo tells Bilbo, like, oh, I'm gonna go wait for Gandalf to show up, and I'm gonna surprise him and all that stuff. And then you see Bilbo writing in his book and sort of narrating the story. That actually worked pretty well. I thought the scenes were pretty cool, and it was just nice seeing some old actors again without just, you know, jumping straight into the story. And obviously loads of people don't know anything about The Hobbit. They just think, oh, it's Lord of the Rings, so it probably has something to do with that. I don't know what to expect. So they basically make these scenes to let the viewer know that this is not actually in the same time period as Lord of the Rings. I think it's like 60 years before that, maybe even more or less. I'm not really sure. But obviously they have to let people know that it's not in the same time period. So that's basically how they did that. And then I'm not entirely sure anymore. I watched it last night, and I didn't really watch it super intensely, so I don't really have the the best of memories when it comes to stuff like this, every detail of a movie. But then basically it cuts to Martin Freeman as the young Bilbo, who's actually, he's super good, actually. I wasn't really sure what to think. I like Martin Freeman. He's pretty funny in, like, The Office. I watched some episodes of Sherlock, and he's really great in those. But I wasn't really sure if he was going to be a very convincing Bilbo. But he was actually really good. He played him very well. So, for anyone just wondering about that, he's actually very good. I think most of the actors have been cast really well. I didn't really see any performance where I thought, oh, this is terrible, why did I go to this movie? No, it was all actually pretty well done. So it cuts to him, and then Gandalf shows up, and he's like, oh, hey, Bilbo, and Bilbo doesn't know him, so he's like, hey, who are you? And then he remembers that Gandalf's the guy who made the fireworks. So, you know, Gandalf says, oh, you should go on an adventure with me. It's basically the same as in the book. And the dwarfs start showing up at Bilbo's house later that night or the next day. I'm not really sure when. He's just about to have dinner. And then, you know, the first dwarf, who I think is Dwalin, actually shows up. And then Balin, and then, you know, just, it's been filmed really well. Like, Bilbo just made his dinner, and he's just sitting down, just looking at his dinner, like, oh man, I'm gonna eat this dinner so hard, it looks so good. And then suddenly you hear that knock on the door, and obviously as the viewer, you know it's gonna be the dwarves if you've read the books. And Martin Freeman just plays that very well, that whole scene where all the dwarves show up and they all just, you know, enter his house and start eating his food and using his appliances and whatnot, and it's just, he plays it very well, even the dwarves as well. It's just a really great performance by everyone. That was one of my favorite scenes that I've seen. So, you know, the dwarves show up and like, oh, we want to go on an adventure. Bilbo says, no, I don't want to go on an adventure. We all know that. I shouldn't really recap the whole story because that's going to take up a lot of time. But, you know, the dwarves are in his house for a bit and they start singing. You know, actually some of the songs from the book, which is really cool because they did that very well as well. So it really does capture the book pretty well, in my opinion. It is very different from Lord of the Rings. I think some people probably went to this movie knowing that it was a prequel to Lord of the Rings, and they expected a lot of action. That's one of the things you'll notice if you watch this movie. There's very little action, because it's just this little, well, it's not actually little fellowship, because the Fellowship of the Ring was smaller, if I believe. It was 9 people, and this is 14 or 15 with Gandalf. But they're not like going to war like they were in the actual Lord of the Rings books. They are, you know, on a quest to get to, what was it called? Shit, I don't remember the name of the city. But the Lonely Mountain, where Smaug is, they want to get there and reclaim their city. Is it Edoron? I'm not really sure anymore. But they want to reclaim that. They basically have this mission, this quest, just like, you know, the actual ring that needs to be destroyed. But in Lord of the Rings, they also want to fight the orcs. And in this, they just want to, you know, go there and reclaim their city and not fight. So there is not too many action scenes. Well, there are a bunch of action scenes, obviously. Like when they go to the Goblin City, if that, I don't really know what the name is. Maybe it's Goblin Town. I think I've read that somewhere. There's some action sequences here and there. But the whole movie is very different from Lord of the Rings in so many ways. I mean, what you have to consider is that Lord of the Rings came out 11 years ago. And the CGI, computer-generated imagery, I'm just going to keep saying CGI from now on. If you're not sure what that is, then I don't really know what to do because I already said it twice, so I can't really do anything about that. But it's come a long way since then. Obviously, for example, Gollum was done with Andy Serkis. Is that his name? Serkis. It sounds weird. It's spelled very differently from the actual word circus. But circus. I don't know. It sounds the same to me. I don't know. I'm doing something wrong here. But he was into that suit, like a, what's that even called? Like a motion capture suit or something like that. And that's, you know, one of the biggest things that was done with CGI in the original Lord of the Rings, like also the wargs and the elephants. But in this, pretty much everything is done with CGI. You got 13 dwarves on screen, and also Martin Freeman, who's a hobbit, who's even smaller than a dwarf. So, I mean, I think a lot of people have seen an interview with Ian McKellen where he says that it was not only fun to make this movie, because he was so tall. Gandalf is really tall. And then all these dwarves are like half his size. So what they did with filming is they actually put like pictures on some sort of like pedestal of the dwarf. And when a certain dwarf would say a line, that light would shine like from that direction so that Ian McKellen would know where to direct his attention to. And it wasn't just fun for him because he was pretty much alone for a lot of scenes, while the dwarves were probably able to be together. So he was, you know, a lot of stuff was done with CGI there as well. There's lots of like special effects, you know. Oh, also I forgot to mention the first scene is actually the cool city where the dwarves own, pretty much. That's their city under the mountain, you know, with their king. I'm not sure what his name is. Something with a Throther, something. And then Smaug suddenly shows up, and that was all done very well as well. There's just a few scenes that were amazing. One of them was, like I said, the dwarves arriving was done extremely well, in my opinion. There was not a lot of CGI like the one with Smaug. And then there's also the one where Bilbo encounters Gollum, and they're like asking each other riddles, you know, and if Bilbo doesn't win, Gollum gets to eat him or something like that. And that was done very well. They picked all the riddles that were actually in the book, I'm pretty sure, and that's what people have told me as well. Because I didn't remember. I read the book like a couple of years ago when I was... Well, it's probably close to 10 years now, or maybe a little less, but I didn't really remember all the riddles, but they definitely used those from the book. And that was all done very well. I thought that the... Gollum looked a little bit, you know, different from the way he did in Lord of the Rings. He looks a bit cuter. And that's another change that I noticed in movies that come out nowadays. It's all about, you know, comic relief and jokes and just sort of making the audience laugh. Same with, for example, you know, a lot of big movies that come out do this. The Avengers, you know, when the Hulk hits, what's his name, Loki or something. And that's obviously, no, it's not Loki actually, is it? Iron Man, he hits someone and it's his friend and it's just a joke. And there's just lots of scenes in movies nowadays where they actually want to compel the audience to laugh so that it's more like a memorable experience for the audience. That happened in this movie as well, The Hobbit. You know, obviously the Fat Dwarf, which is Bumber, I think. Maybe pronouncing that wrong. I'm probably pronouncing everything wrong. I don't really care. He's a lot of comic relief. He's like extremely fat. I do remember from the movies, I mean the books, they said he was very fat, like the fattest of the dwarves. But in this, he's literally like 4 dwarves put into each other and morphed, and he's extremely fat. And it's pretty funny, but they make, you know, a lot of jokes with that, and basically with everything. The part we've all seen in the trailer is with in the Goblin Town, you know, under the mountain in the Misty Mountain. That's not the Misty Mountains, I think. One of those mountains, and they're down there, and they all fall down on this wooden platform, and they fall from this giant height. And I mean, in a realistic film, they would have died, but in this, there's, you know, it sort of feels like the dwarves and the people, like Bilbo and Gandalf, have God mode on for like all of the film. They just do not really get hurt unless they're supposed to get hurt. Like in some of the actual fights, then they get hurt, and if they're fighting goblins, then they don't get hurt. Nothing really happens. And that's something I felt was very different from Lord of the Rings, is that there's not really that feeling of imminent danger, you know, like they might die at any time and it's really dangerous. Not the same kind of feeling, because you did have that with Lord of the Rings, but in The Hobbit it doesn't really happen that often. Only sometime later this giant orc shows up, who is also from the books, I assume. I don't remember him at all. His name was Azog the something, Devourer something. He had some cool nickname. He was all done with CGI, so it's really giant, big, white orc, a pale orc. And he rides a white warg, and only pretty much with scenes where he's in it, you actually get the feeling that they're in danger, which is kind of a waste, in my opinion. I prefer the style of Lord of the Rings, the actual, like, the movies that came out, where it's somewhat more of a realistic approach. There is, you know, comic relief, but it's not all riddled throughout the movie, you know, especially with the Hobbits. There's some comic relief, and with the start in the Shire, and it's all sort of light-hearted. And this movie pretty much feels like that throughout the whole movie. Even the scene with the trolls felt that way, where they weren't really in danger. It was just funny, and in that way, you know, like, what they did with this is that, what's his face, Bilbo, starts talking to the trolls as he and the dwarves are captured, and saying that basically all the dwarves have parasites like tapeworm, and they shouldn't eat the dwarves. And then the trolls start discussing that, and it feels like sort of a comic moments, pretty much. Not actually, like they're really in danger, about to be murdered, you know? Because basically one of the dwarves like, hey, I don't have tapeworm, you have tapeworm, you stupid hobbit. And it's obviously one of those scenes where they want the audience to laugh. But whenever someone is like, it's like when someone points at me, it's like, hey, you should laugh right now. I don't do it, you know, because I don't really feel compelled to laugh at those moments. So I don't know, maybe it's just me. But overall, there were just a lot of scenes that were done really great. The CGI is pretty convincing for the most part in the version that I've seen. And I do feel that they've captured the essence of the book, because obviously the book in itself is way more lighthearted than Lord of the Rings, where there's an actual war. You do see some people like Saruman is in this movie, but they're obviously setting him up to be the bad guy, where he's saying to the dwarves like, oh, you shouldn't go to your old city, you'll never make it, and you know, he's kind of a jerk to him. They're obviously doing it to set him up to be the big bad guy. There's a few scenes with Galadriel as well. She wasn't super memorable. I honestly don't really remember what she was in there for. Then there's some other things people might want to know is Radagast the Brown, the wizard played by Sylvester McCoy, I think his name is. I don't know him, but I believe that he's well known for his performance in, is it Doctor Who? One of those shows that I don't watch. Maybe it's a British show. But he is a little goofy. I don't really feel that he was that way in any of the books. He's literally covered in bird shit. Literally, just his face is, he has that stuff on his face and his shoulder for like most of the movie. He rides a sleigh with a bunch of bunnies or rabbits pulling it, and I thought that was pretty fun. I mean, it has been adapted toward an audience of, you know, 2012, but at the same time it was also a little bit over the top. But if you're, I hope that some people will not be too bothered by it. I've seen some people that were just really angry that it wasn't exactly like the book, but it was a pretty fun performance by him, where he's this really goofy character who finds out that there is a necromancer who is also from the book, I believe. Like a bunch of spiders attack the forest he lives in. I believe he lives in the Mirkwood, and he follows the spiders to Dol Guldur, where the evil necromancer has returned, you know, who is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who's also from Doctor Who, isn't he? Or Sherlock. I think he's from Sherlock. Who's this main bad guy. I think he is actually credited as the Necromancer, even though he's basically... Radagast is recapping the story to Gandalf. I saw a Necromancer, and you see this black blob who takes human form. You don't even see it. It's from a very long distance. And at this point, Radagast gets scared, and he runs off with his sleigh of rabbits. So you don't really get to see much of that. You know, don't go to this movie just to see Benedict Cumberbatch, because you are going to be very disappointed. But overall, I know that I've mostly focused on some of the bad parts, but it's a really good movie. It's not perfect, obviously, but neither was Lord of the Rings. If you're okay with somewhat more, you know, light-hearted movie, a little bit more geared towards kids, I assume, then you're going to have a good time at The Hobbit. They did actually, you know, put in a lot of time to make it a little bit more like the book. Obviously, the actual book's like, what, 400 pages, and they are making this into a 2.5-hour movie, but 3 times that. So there's lots of time for character development. Pretty much all the dwarves get their own unique personality, which is also done really great. You actually really start to feel for the dwarves and Bilbo as well. I think that the performances were just really, really, you know, solid. There's really nothing I can say that was bad about it. The only performance that some people might criticize is Sylvester McCoy as Radagast, because he's too goofy. But I'm pretty sure that he was written to be a little bit more goofy in this version of the movie. You know, because that's what people want. People want to be able to laugh at a movie as well and not take it entirely seriously. So, just the story's really great. I should probably put spoilers in the title for this, because otherwise people are going to go nuts. But overall, it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed myself. It's a bit long, but if you don't mind long movies, I think you're going to enjoy yourself. Basically, they made a pretty faithful adaptation of the book, except they even made it better by expanding on it a little bit more. Like, I remember in the book, certain dwarves had, you know, very little to no personality. They got like a few lines, because there's 13 dwarves. But in this, they pretty much all have their own personality, you know, even some that maybe didn't speak that as much have gotten their own little, you know, thing, a little gimmick, basically, to make them more memorable. Like one of the dwarves, I don't really know who it is anymore. Maybe it's Biffer or Bofer. No, it's not Bofer. I think it's Beefer, who has like an X stuck in his head, like an orc X, so he can't hear anymore or can't speak. I don't really know which one it is, but he's, you know, impaired that way. And they made him more memorable, you know, through this. Maybe he didn't have any lines in the book or not enough, so they figured, let's change some things up. So they did change some things here and there, but for the biggest part, I honestly think it's for the better. So if you're interested in going to The Hobbit, you know, if you actually read the book and you were like, oh, I want to see what they made, you know, off of the book, I would definitely recommend going there. And if you haven't read the book, I would still say go for it. You know, if you're okay with a lighthearted movie that is a little bit more geared towards kids, then I'd say just go for it. So that's pretty much my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, I suppose. Found it informational, if that's even a word, informative. And I'm sorry for the absolutely horrible gameplay of Guardians of Middle-earth, which is a MOBA game on Xbox. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you later.
Defeat.